Greetings. Fall is in full swing, and while I may not be a fan of the colder weather, one thing I can always get behind is soup season. So here's a week's worth of soup recipes to get you in the cozy spirit. Some of these are old favorites, others I'm trying for the first time, so we're gonna go on a little journey together, and hopefully this inspires you to put some love into comforting meals this week.
That's really good.
Thanks to Thrive Market for sponsoring this video. So I've been seeing lasagna soup everywhere lately, and it looks really good, but just like real lasagna, it's got a lot of meat and cheese in it. And with plant-based alternatives costing an arm and a leg these days, I just haven't been able to bring myself to take out a small personal loan for one pot of soup. But today's the day I finally try it out and see if it's worth the hype. There's not a ton of prep work here, just dice up a white or yellow onion and mince up as much garlic as you like. Drizzle some oil into a Dutch oven and saute your onions till they're translucent. And you'll need about a pound of your favorite vegan sausage. My go-tos are the hot Italian sausage by Beyond Meat or the spicy sausage by Impossible. And I like them equally, so I usually just buy whichever one happens to be on sale. Break it up with your spoon and let it brown. Then add in your minced garlic and saute that for just another minute before adding in our tomato trinity. So that's going to be a few tablespoons of tomato paste, crushed tomatoes, and tomato sauce. Then pour in a few cups of vegetable broth, or in my case, I'm using water and beef-style vegan bouillon cubes to make it extra savory. Along with some dried oregano and a few sprigs of fresh basil. We're gonna add more fresh basil in later as well because I love it. And if you wanted an extra shortcut, this is where you could replace all of the tomato ingredients and the seasonings with a big jar of your favorite marinara sauce. While that's coming up to a boil, you're gonna break up about 8 ounces of lasagna noodles into smaller pieces. Or if you'd prefer, you can use a roughly pasta shape, something like mafalda corta or campanelle. And this needs to simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes. Just make sure to give it a stir every so often to keep the noodles from sticking together. The noodles are almost perfectly done, and now I'm stirring in more fresh basil and some homemade cashew cream. Now the cream is optional, but I figure we may as well go full hog here and just make it as decadent as possible. So the soup itself is pretty simple as you've seen, but what takes this recipe absolutely over the top is that it's served with a big scoop of cheese on top. And for that, you'll need your favorite vegan ricotta alternative. I'm making my own with a combination of blanched soaked almonds, unsweetened plant milk, and extra firm tofu blended with lemon juice. There are plenty of homemade vegan ricotta recipes online, but this combo is my favorite because the tofu makes it really creamy and boosts the protein content, but the almonds give it that ever so slightly grainy texture that's characteristic of ricotta. You'll also need your favorite vegan Parmesan and mozzarella. There are plenty of options on the market these days, and it really just comes down to personal taste. Combine all 3 of your cheeses along with some fresh basil, some garlic powder, salt and pepper, and a drizzle of extra virgin olive oil. So is the viral lasagna soup worth making? I really liked it. It was actually giving Chef Boyardee, and when I say that, I mean it as like the highest compliment because I used to be obsessed with that as a kid along with Hamburger Helper. This might be controversial. I think I actually prefer this to classic lasagna. I think I'm just a soup person.
Oh man, that's really, really good. Immaculate. Since when do I use the word immaculate?
Usually I prefer more budget-friendly recipes for day-to-day, but just like with regular lasagna, I think I kind of regard this as a special occasion meal, something I'd make for like dinner guests or for a potluck or a holiday, or just if I wanted to treat myself to some really indulgent comfort food. Big thank you to today's video sponsor, Thrive Market. Thrive Market is an online membership-based grocery store that makes it super easy and convenient to get all the products you love at affordable prices. I've been using Thrive Market since 2017. Fun fact, they were actually the first to ever sponsor a video here on this channel. And I love using Thrive Market to stock up on pantry staples, things like dried beans, baking supplies, canned goods. They also carry a lot of specialty products that are hard to find at regular grocery stores, especially when it comes to snacks.
Yeah, snack selection is my favorite part about Thrive Market. And they make it super easy to sort by lifestyle or diet, so I can just filter by vegan, and then I don't have to worry about looking through every single label and checking ingredients. And I love that they have customer reviews, so that way you're never wasting your money on a product that you've never had and you might not like. And speaking of saving money, we saved almost $60 on our last order, which is crazy.
How it works is an annual membership costs $60 and it gets you access to everything on Thrive Market's site, which isn't just food, by the way. It also includes things like beauty, beauty, bath and body, home, and even pet supplies. They actually guarantee that you'll make back the cost of the membership in savings, which we did in just one order. Every order is delivered with carbon neutral shipping, and orders over $49 ship for free. And if you weren't sold yet, for every membership purchased, Thrive Market donates one to a family in need. If you'd like to try out Thrive Market for yourself, you can get 30% off your first order plus a free gift worth up to $60 by signing up using our link. Check out the description box for all those details, and now let's get back to our soups. Okay, this next soup I've been dying to try since I first learned about it. It's a Polish soup. It's called zupa ogórkowa. Sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation, but it's pickle soup. I've never made anything like this, but I love pickles, I love soup, so I'm going into this with some high hopes. So of course you're gonna need pickles. I'm using kosher dill pickles, and we're using both the pickles and the brine. I don't recommend skimping on this ingredient because it's such a key flavor, so make sure you're getting a good brand. And you're gonna finely chop or grate your pickles. You'll also need onion, carrot, and celery. From what I gather, celery seems to refer to celery root in many Polish recipes. I actually couldn't find any celery root near me, so I just used the stalks, but I'm actually really curious now how the flavor might differ. Then you need some waxy potatoes, something like Yukon Golds, peeled and cubed. And just a quick reminder that if you don't want to throw out your potato peels, you can always roast them and make crispy potato skins. They're really tasty. Grab a Dutch oven or a nice heavy pot and drizzle in some olive oil or add some vegan butter. And we're gonna saute our onion, celery, and carrot until the onion's translucent, and this just takes a few minutes. Now in go our potatoes along with the vegetable broth, and we're gonna bring that up to a boil and let it cook until the potatoes are tender. This usually takes between 15 and 20 minutes. And in the meantime, we're actually gonna cook our grated pickles in a separate pan in a little bit of butter. I just sauteed them for about 5 minutes to soften them slightly and to cook off the extra moisture. After about 20 minutes, the potatoes are easy to pierce with a fork, and it's time to add in our cooked pickles. And by this time, the house is smelling so incredible, and I'm really excited to taste this. Most of the zupa ogórkowa recipes I researched call for a little bit of either heavy cream or sour cream, so I made a batch of my favorite vegan-friendly alternative, which is just soaked cashews blended with plant milk and a little bit of lemon juice. You can temper the cream by whisking it with some of the hot broth before adding it into the pot, and this amount of cream isn't enough to make the soup thick like a chowder. It really just gives the broth a slightly richer texture. Lastly, I chopped up some fresh dill. I'm stirring it into the soup, and I'm also adding some extra to the top of each serving. I also made a fresh loaf of sourdough bread specifically to enjoy with this soup. So my verdict, I give this soup a 10 out of 10. I could make this every week and probably never get tired of it. But I do want to stress how important it is to use good pickles. I recommend using ones that are fermented rather than just brined in vinegar for the best flavor. And I know this because I actually made another batch later that week, and I used just super cheap vinegar pickles, and it was still tasty, but just not quite as amazing. Now I'm passing the mic over to Eric for our next one, and he's gonna make his vegan beef stew. I know this is a stew, which is technically not soup, but I still maintain that they serve the same emotional purpose, so I feel like it belongs in this video.
Let's start with a little bit of prep work. First, you're going to need a white or yellow onion cut into big chunks. This one was huge, so we only used half. 2 peeled carrots and 2 stalks of celery. Cut those into big ol' hunks as well. 8 ounces of mushrooms. I like to use white or cremini mushrooms because they're cheap and delicious, but you can use something fancier if you want to. Chop those into quarters. A couple of potatoes, peeled and cubed. I recommend using a waxy potato like Yukon Golds because they don't fall apart as the stew cooks. Mince up a few cloves of garlic, and measure garlic with your heart, as Sarah would say. In addition to those fresh ingredients, you'll of course need a beef substitute, and you have a few options. For the most classic dish, we like these Beyond Meat steak tips. For a more budget-friendly alternative, we love using soy curls. Just make sure to rehydrate them in boiling water and wring them out ahead of time. If you don't mind not having chunks of beef, you can use your favorite plant-based ground like Impossible. You'll want a large Dutch oven or pot, preferably something that's got a little bit of weight to it. Add olive oil or vegan butter, and once it's nice and hot, go ahead and add whatever meat substitute you're using and give those a nice sear. Then add in your onion and mushrooms and sweat those. We want to cook off the extra moisture in the mushrooms and let them build a little bit of color. This usually takes me between 5 and 8 minutes. Now add in your minced garlic and saute that for about a minute before stirring in a couple of tablespoons of flour. It's okay if you're starting to get some sticking to the bottom of your pan. That's called fond, and it's going to give our stew a ton of flavor once we deglaze with our wine. Speaking of, you're going to need a dry red wine like a Merlot, Cabernet, or Pinot Noir. You could also use beer if you want this dish less French and more Irish. Something like a stout or dark ale would work great. Pour that in and use your wooden spoon to scrape up any bits that are still sticking to the bottom. You'll also need a beef-style veggie broth like these bouillon cubes we always use. So go ahead and add that in along with some tomato paste. Then in go the celery and carrot, plus the potatoes. And now we're going to add in some fresh herbs. You can look for a poultry blend so you don't have to pay for them all separately. Personally, I just like to use rosemary and thyme, but you can also add in some of the sage. I just toss in some whole sprigs along with a few bay leaves. Now's a good time to add in black pepper too, so add as much as you like. This stew works well with a lot of pepper. Once that comes up to a boil, go ahead and lower the heat, cover up the pot, and let thyme do the work. I usually let it simmer for about an hour, but it can go longer if you want. After that hour, we can fish out the bay leaves and the stems from the herbs. Add in some fresh or frozen peas. I like to add them at the end so they retain their color and so that they don't get mushy. They don't need that much time to heat up. And lastly, whisk together a cornstarch slurry and stir that into the stew to thicken it a little bit more with the help of the flour we added in earlier. Once the peas are heated through and the stew is as thick as you like it, give it a taste for salt and pepper, and it's time to serve it up. I know there are already potatoes in the stew, but it just goes so well with mashed potatoes that Sarah and I literally cannot help ourselves. But you can serve it with some crusty bread, over rice, or over pasta, like my dad would serve it when I was a kid. The stew is just the perfect dish for the ensuing cold weather. It's so comforting that it's like a temporary cure for the winter blues, but I'm not a doctor, so don't quote me on that.
The steak is so good in this.
It is really good.
Is this the best thing you make? It's really good.
It's really good, right?
Next up, I want to show you how to make my favorite vegan ramen. This one might be my favorite recipe of the bunch. It's just so flavorful. It's got miso, garlic, and ginger, and you can dress it up with all your favorite toppings. It's just so comforting. The first step is to prepare our dashi, or our savory stock. If you need something quick and easy, you can totally just use a carton of vegetable broth, but if you have a little extra time and access to an Asian market, grab some kombu, which is a type of seaweed, and some dried shiitake mushrooms and steep them in boiling water. These ingredients are packed with umami flavor that's going to provide so much depth to our ramen. Another easy option is to use a vegan dashi concentrate like yondu or kelp dashi granules. Once you have your dashi sorted out, let's prep a few fresh aromatic ingredients. So slice up a few green onions and separate the white and green parts. Then mince up as much garlic as you like, and then take a thumb of fresh ginger, peel it and mince it up, or use a microplane to grate it. Heat a pot over medium-high and drizzle in some toasted sesame oil. Now I know that a lot of people say this is meant to be used more as a finishing oil rather than for cooking, but personally I just really like it in this recipe, so use something else if you prefer. Saute the white parts of the green onions along with ginger, garlic, and chili paste for a few minutes till the green onions start to soften and become translucent. Now add in a few tablespoons of miso paste. I'm using white miso paste. You could use a different kind if you prefer. Then you'll also add in some soy sauce and a little splash of the dashi. And use your wooden spoon to break up the miso paste and get it coating all of your aromatics. Just keep everything moving and cook it for another minute. You might start to get some caramelization on the bottom of your pan, and that is okay. It's gonna give us lots of flavor. Deglaze with a splash of mirin. This is a type of cooking wine. If you don't have it, you can sub in some rice vinegar, but that's a little less sweet than mirin, so you might wanna also add in like a little pinch of sugar to balance it out. Scrape up anything sticking to the bottom of the pan with your spoon and then add in your dashi. At this point, you can cover the pot, reduce the heat all the way down to low, and just let it kind of simmer for as long as it takes you to prep your other ingredients. As far as noodles go, you can just steal some noodles from a pack of instant ramen if you want, or I personally love these Lotus Foods ramen noodles I get from Thrive Market. They're really good, but whatever noodles you like, just cook those according to the package directions. Then you can get creative with all kinds of toppings, but here are my personal favorites. Number 1, bean sprouts. I just boil these in generously salted water till they're really soft. These are super nutritious and I love them. They're kind of addictive. They're one of my favorite foods. I also like to splurge on some shiitake mushrooms. I just slice them up and then saute them in my cast iron pan with plenty of vegan butter, a little bit of salt. This combo is so simple but just so freaking delicious. I also like to add corn and edamame, and I already have one too many pots going on by now, so I just microwave these. Also, if you don't want to go to all the trouble to keep the ingredients separate, you can literally just boil your veggies right in the broth and call it a day. I'm just really particular about how I plate stuff. So now that everything's prepped, we're just gonna go back to our broth and stir in some unsweetened plain soy milk. This is optional, but personally, I just love that it adds some extra substance to the broth, gives it a little bit of a creamier mouthfeel, and it also bumps up the protein content a little bit, which never hurts. You could also use something like oat milk or cashew milk, really anything nice and creamy with a neutral flavor. And once I've assembled my bowl, I top it usually with some scallions and some toasted sesame seeds. And you can add other things like bok choy, edamame, soken tofu, vegan spam exists now too. I just love to try a new combination of ingredients every single time I make this. For our final recipe, let's make something that just screams autumn. This is also the easiest one to make, so if all the other recipes seem like just too much, make this roasted butternut squash and carrot soup. You're gonna love it. You need to do just a little bit of prep work, just a little bit of chopping, and then after that, it's super hands-off. So preheat your oven and then peel and cube a medium-sized butternut squash. Now you can technically just cut the squash in half, drizzle it with some olive oil, and roast it that way. But the reason I like to cube it first is that it creates more surface area that can brown slightly while it's roasting. And that caramelization is what's gonna add so much flavor to the soup. So transfer that to a baking tray and then peel and chop a few carrots and an onion. And I also add a few whole garlic cloves. Give it a nice generous drizzle of olive oil and then season it with salt and pepper, toss it, and then pop it in the oven. I have mine set to 400 and I roast it for 40 to 50 minutes or until everything has picked up some nice color. Give everything a little stir once or twice during that time to help it cook evenly. And I actually overcooked mine just a tad. Some of the onion pieces got a little too crispy. I have this bad habit of turning off my timers and then immediately forgetting to actually get up and do the thing I set the timer for, so there's that. But it's totally okay because it's still gonna turn out delicious. Transfer the roasted veggies to a pot along with enough veggie broth to cover everything. And then I make a little bouquet out of some of my favorite fresh herbs, in this case sage, thyme, and rosemary. And we're actually just gonna simmer and infuse the soup with the herbs for a few minutes before taking them out. And I do this because these herbs have really pronounced flavors and I just don't want them to outshine the roasted squash. Bring everything up to a boil, let it simmer for a few minutes. If you wanted to boost the protein a little here, you could try the hack I showed in my last soup video where I added a can of white beans to my roasted tomato soup. Go ahead and fish out the herbs now if you added them and use an immersion blender to puree the soup. And here's where you get to decide how thick you want it. You can add in extra veggie broth as needed to thin it out. And if you wanted to make it a touch creamier, you could add in some coconut cream or cashew cream or your favorite substitute, and then give it a taste and add more salt and pepper. And whenever I make a pureed soup, I always want to serve it with something like a grilled cheese or some other kind of sandwich to make it feel like a more substantial meal. And to keep within the cozy fall theme, I thought I'd go all out and make a grilled cheese sandwich with some caramelized onions, some sliced apple, and some vegan smoked Gouda. I don't own a panini press, so I usually just put a heavy pot on my sandwiches to give them a good press. I feel like they're just better this way. And for full disclosure, I actually pulled the apple out of the sandwich after I tried it. I don't think I'm for hot apples in a savory context. Leave a comment and let me know how you feel on the matter. Then of course you gotta dip the grilled cheese in the butternut squash soup. This combo is so good. That wraps up our 5 soup recipes. Which one do you think would be your favorite? Leave a comment. And if you want some more inspiration for cozy season, check out my soup video from last winter with even more soups that are healthy and budget friendly. And thanks again to Thrive Market for sponsoring today's video. Don't forget you can get 30% off your first order plus a free gift by signing up at my link, thrivemarket.com/sarahsvegankitchen. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.